Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to discuss the need to strengthen American families and enhance workplace flexibility. And I'm very pleased to be joined here on the floor of the Senate this morning by my good friend, the junior senator from Maine. In Nebraska and all throughout the country, too many families continue to struggle in this weak economy. Even with moms and dads working 2 or 3 jobs, some families, they find it hard to get ahead. Household income has plummeted by more than $3,300. 3.7 million more women are in poverty. The average price for a gallon of gas, well, that's nearly doubled. And the labor force participation rate has declined by 2.9 percentage points since 2009. Many economists agree that the surest way to generate sustained economic growth and empower struggling families is to pass comprehensive tax reform. Addressing overregulation should also be a top priority. Moreover, it's a simple truth that less government spending means families will keep more of their own money. Agreement on how exactly to achieve these needed fiscal reforms remains elusive and, unfortunately, unlikely in a Capitol paralyzed with election fever. Nonetheless, there are reasonable policy changes that we can all agree on, and those changes will make life easier for families. I've been working on a number of common sense measures, my Strong Families and Strong Communities plan, to empower working families, increase take-home pay, and ensure flexibility in the workplace. Today, Mr. President, I'd like to discuss part of that plan. It's a bipartisan proposal, the Strong Families Act, and I introduced that with Senator King to address the challenges of paid leave. It's no secret that balancing responsibilities at home with duties at work is a common struggle for working parents. For an increasing number of Americans, these pressures include raising young children while also caring for aging parents. While I believe we must do more to help these working families, the usual Washington answers of that one-size-fits-all, those federal mandates, those higher taxes, that's not the solution we're proposing. Instead, I believe we should focus on a more balanced approach that respects both those family obligations and the employer's costs of doing business. There are ways to increase the options for working adults without hurting existing employment arrangements or threatening job security. The Family and Medical Leave Act, the FMLA of 1993, requires employers of 50 or more employees to provide up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave, which can be used for events like the birth or adoption of children, serious medical issues, or providing care to close family members. The problem, though, for many families is that current law does not require paid time off. Unpaid leave is practically impossible for countless Americans, especially hourly workers, those who live paycheck to paycheck. Many employers voluntarily offer generous compensation packages, and those include paid parental or medical leave. A survey of more than 1,100 employers found that 68% of large employers provide that paid parental leave. At the same time, not all workers enjoy these options, despite increasingly complex family demands. This, again, is especially true for low-wage workers. And with more than half of women working as the primary breadwinners, workplace flexibility has become a necessity for our 21st century families. It's not just children who require that personal care and attention, it's also our aging parents. Nearly half of middle-aged adults have elderly parents, and they're still supporting their own children. Over 43 million Americans provide direct care to older family members, with women serving as 66% of all primary caregivers. And as we baby boomers, as our generation ages, the number of senior citizens requiring care will likely spike. Less take-home pay for those caregivers means tighter finances, more stress, and lost opportunities, all at a time when families are confronting health crisis or dealing with unique challenges of starting a new family. With such events often coinciding with high medical bills, the last thing a stressed family needs is a smaller working budget. Senator King and I have offered a proposal that would enable working families to have continued access to pay while they are meeting necessary family obligations. Our plan would create a tax credit to encourage employers to voluntarily offer paid leave for workers. To be eligible for that tax credit, the employer must, at a minimum, offer 4 weeks of paid leave, but they could offer more. Paid leave would be available on an hourly basis and would be separate from the other vacation or sick leave. For each hour paid leave is provided, the employer would receive a 25% non-refundable tax credit. The more paid FMLA time the employer offers, the greater the tax credit. This tax credit would be available to any employer with qualified employees, regardless of size. Importantly, our bill's reasonable. It's a balanced solution that can make a real difference in the lives of working families. And we do this without new mandates or new taxes. It creates an incentive structure to encourage employers to offer that paid leave, specifically targeting those who hire lower-income, hourly paid workers. Mr. President, this should not be just another election year issue. This is a middle-class issue, and our bill takes the partisan politics out of it, and it really offers a meaningful solution that we can pass. Frankly, I would like to thank my friend from Maine, Senator King, who joined me in offering this bill. Once again, this now famous Surf and Turf Caucus is working together on a common sense proposal, and it's a proposal that can help American families. I'm grateful for the senator's input, for his hard work and his friendship, and I look forward to closely working with him in the future so that we can advance this measure in the United States Senate. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President. The senator from Maine.
Mr. President, I'm delighted to join my colleague from Nebraska to introduce what I think is an important and common sense and workable bill that could be passed in the next several weeks. And I think we would find broad agreement across the political spectrum. The question we're answering today is, what does Suriname, Papua New Guinea, and the United States have in common? The answer is, they're the only 3 countries in the world that we've been able to turn up that don't have any provision for paid maternity leave. Every member of the industrialized world except the United States has some kind of coverage for paid maternity leave. This chart gives the various levels, and you see red is the United States, Suriname, and Papua New Guinea. That's it in the whole world. To me, this indicates that this is something that we can do that won't affect our competitiveness, won't be a problem in our economic growth, and in fact, I believe it will contribute to it. Today, a family that has a health crisis with an elderly parent, a child, or has the joyful issue of a new child in their family has a terrible dilemma. The dilemma is, do I stay home to take care of the child or the elderly parent in a health crisis, or do I have to put food on the table by going to work? If every hour I miss work, I lose an hour of pay. That's a dilemma that we should not put our people through. I believe that this is, as I say, a productivity issue. All of the discussion that we've had in recent months about pay and gender inequity often comes down to the issue of workplace flexibility, particularly in the case of women that are often the ones that are put into this dilemma that I mentioned of choosing between their earnings and their familial obligations. It's women who are often trapped in this dilemma, and they're the ones that are asking for and seeking, quite reasonably, the same kind of flexibility that virtually every other working person in the world already enjoys. I like this bill and agreed with my colleague from Nebraska to join in it because it's voluntary. It's not a mandate from Washington. It's not something that says every employer in the country has to do this and there are going to be rules and a bureaucracy and adjudications and all those kinds of things. No, this is a voluntary incentive-based program that says to every employer, not just those 50 or above or 100 or above or 500 or above, every employer in the country will have available to them this tax credit for offering paid leave to their employees. I think this is the way we should approach this, not, as my colleague says, with a one-size-fits-all mandate emanating from Washington. I think incentives are always better than mandates. The other thing that's important about this bill is that it really focuses on the people who are currently least likely to have some kind of paid leave available to them, and that's people that work on an hourly basis. That's who this bill is focused on. The interesting thing on the data is that as you go up the income scale into salaried employees, there already is more than 2/3 of American workers in this category already have paid leave policies. And as you go, but it's when you get down into the working people, the hourly workers, that's where the real problem is. And that's why I think this bill has an important focus on hourly work, people who are covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act, and people who otherwise just aren't going to have this kind of protection. This, Mr. President, is about flexibility. And as I've talked to, listened to women's groups and advocacy groups, flexibility is always the first thing on the agenda. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. So people, men or women, don't have to make that agonizing decision. People who are living paycheck to paycheck don't have to make the agonizing decision between being able to put food on the table and pay the rent and staying home to take care of an ill child or an elderly parent, or to stay home a reasonable period after the joyous occasion of the arrival of a new child. It's also about productivity. I believe that we will see an increase in productivity because people won't be preoccupied when they're at work. They know they're going to be there and they know they're going to have this protection. And it takes away that agonizing worry and anxiety. And it also, by giving people paid leave, will enable them to continue to contribute to the economy. And I believe it will be actually a positive stimulus to our economy. And of course, everybody says, well, we're in competition with the rest of the world. Not on this. Not on this. Everywhere else in the world provides this level of benefit. So we're really in a catch-up situation. And I believe, as I said, I think we'll see an increase in productivity and in economic activity. And then finally, it's about fairness. And frankly, Mr. President, it's to some extent about gender fairness. It's about fairness to working women who are expected in our culture to be the ones to take care of the sick child. That may not be the fairest thing, and that may not be the wave of the future, but that's the fact today. And it's about fairness to those working women who today have to make a choice between putting food on the table and taking care of a sick child, or taking the necessary time off after the birth of a child in order to have that event be a happy one and not an economic strain on the family. So, Mr. President, I'm delighted to join my colleague from Nebraska, the leader of the Turf and Surf Caucus, in her, I think, brilliant bill that I think can really, it's something that we can come together on in a bipartisan basis and actually do something, and not just talk about the problem of income inequality, and not just talk about the problem of fairness, not just talk about the problem of flexibility in the workplace, but actually do something about it in a practical, common sense way that I think will have tremendous ramifications across the country. So I am delighted to be able to join in this bill. I compliment the senator from Nebraska for her work in bringing this forward, and look forward to what I hope could be a expeditious consideration of the bill in the Senate and in the Congress. This is a change we can make that will make a real difference in people's lives across America. Thank you, Mr. President.